started, we want to encourage you to submit questions for our speaker to answer live today. So feel free to drop questions using the Slido QR code. We're going to have that here on the screen for you to use, or you can go to slido.com and enter the code that appears. The first thing I want to do, or that you should see on Slido, is a quick poll. Just who's already interested in this career pathway? So think about how interested you are already and give us a quick response here. And we'll revisit this after we've had a chance today to hear from our guest. So thanks so much, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. You know, your career journey is probably not going to look like anyone else's, and that's what makes it really special. Welcome to Tallo Real Careers, Real Journeys, where we're going to explore the twists and turns that lead people to where they are today. I'm excited to introduce Lucy Nersessian and hear about her path from being a student to now as a career in graphic design, among other things. Lucy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Glad to be here. Super excited to chat with you all.
You bet.
Awesome.
Before we talk about your career, can you just tell us a little bit about Lucy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in New York City, spent most of my adult life there. I went to New York University and studied theater design. So that's essentially lighting and costumes and set design for theater. And I moved to Vermont about 13 years ago and really love to do anything outdoors. We have two very large Mastiff dogs who are our babies. And apart from that, I just really love to like cook and garden and, eat good food and really spend as much time outdoors. So
Wow, fantastic. I love those pups. That's a great picture. Well, can you describe for us your professional role?
yes, I am currently a manager of design and research operations for a software company. So we have a small team of four that runs operations for the product design org here in this company, which is pretty cool. So
Wow, it does. Sounds like very cool. So you're able to use design, but it sounds like you're doing a lot more than just designing and building things right now.
yes, absolutely. Definitely part of the career path that, started out as a designer, but you still use the same skills in different roles. So
Gotcha. So can you give us an idea of like where you are in your career and what a typical day looks like? What is the work that you actually do?
yeah, it's a great question. So in software, if anyone's familiar with product design, it's essentially designing software. So we have a team of about 120 designers who literally spend their day working in the software and developing and designing what the software looks like. And it's a company called Procore Technologies, and the software that we build is used by construction companies across the world to do things like project management and estimating and scheduling and all kinds. It's a really large product. So lots of designers working on it, and our team really helps facilitate how the designers work. So we work on two levels. One, we're working directly with the designers to do things like what software are they using? We do like all hands meetings and we're the ones who facilitate them every month. We do a lot of work with just how they're getting their work, how they're inputting their work and things of that nature. And we also work with engineering and product managers to kind of facilitate the work that goes from design to engineering so that the product can be built. So it's a very broad role. So
No kidding. No kidding.
yeah.
And obviously design is an important piece of that, but as your career has described, like you've taken that and done a lot of other things with it as part of a more holistic role in the marketing work for the company. You had shared some really fantastic examples in some of the slides that you provided. I've pulled up the first one here. Can you talk to us a little bit about what this is?
Yeah. So I'm actually a self-taught designer. And so, after I graduated, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I ended up joining a design firm for theater. And while I was there, I started working on marketing materials and I really fell in love with that. And then I ended up getting a job at PSP Sports, which this company still is around. And I spent 20 years working for them, which is a very long time in today's world. And they are a publishing company and they publish all probably at this point, I'd say 90+% of the professional yearbooks and game programs for professional sports. So that is, anytime you go to a sports game and they have a game program or a yearbook, chances are PSP Sports publishes it.
Wow.
And they also do a very large number of college sports as well. So here are some examples. I mean, we did every single sport. Our lives were dictated by sports schedules. So from August through the end of the year, it was football, college and professional. It was basketball, it was hockey, college football, bowl games at the end of the year, which are pretty intense. But it was also really great to, we had autonomy to work directly with the teams. So we had good relationships with people that work in these places and were able to really, had very free will to design what we wanted. So I've got some examples here of the Detroit Tigers and the Broncos after they won their third Super Bowl, the Mets, and I think that's the Utah Jazz at the bottom. And it was definitely really cool, but also very intense. Professional sports
Yeah.
does not stop for anything. Hurricanes, doesn't matter. The programs have to be delivered. If we have to reprint something because of an error, you have to do it. So it had a lot of pluses to it, but also it was hard. It was hard work.
I can see why you stayed as long as you did. That just sounds like super exciting work. And I'm guessing these are examples of some of the things that you built while you were in
Yep.
that role.
Yep. Those were actual printed books that were sent out. So yeah.
And then this
Um,
slide, you've got a lot of non-sports things. I'm guessing these are some additional examples of work that you've done.
yeah, I did a lot of freelance work while I was at PSP on the side. Some of it was paid, but a lot of it is not. I think that a great way to gain experience and also just to feel really good is to volunteer your services to nonprofits and other organizations like charitable organizations who are looking for marketing materials and just don't have the funds to pay for a designer. And it's a great way to also do things that you might not do in your day job. As much as I love sports, I got really bored of designing sports year round. And so having the ability to do other things was a lot of fun. So these are just examples of some of, newsletters and posters and an invitation for a charitable fundraiser and things of that nature, which were just fun. And I did all of them for free because it's just, if you love to do it, you'll do it. And it's just a lot of fun.
And such a great way to have a meaningful impact. I think when people
Yes.
discover you have that creative ability that most people don't have, right? And not just the
Yes.
creative ability, but you have the skills and the ability
Yeah,
to create things like this. That's pretty
absolutely.
awesome. And I love that you call out that it's a great way to gain experience. And it's something I would guess, Lucy, students could start doing something like that in high school, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is no shortage of needs of folks who would like free help. I mean, let's be, that the price is right. And so it's a great way not only to get experience, but to make connections and to develop relationships with people out there that you may not otherwise, get to know or, have relationships with. So
Right. No, great advice. That's fantastic. So moving on maybe a little further into your career, here you've got another slide with a
yeah.
different type of graphic. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. After those 20 years, I decided I wanted to do something a little bit different. And so I ended up working at a consulting firm. And what consultants do essentially is go into other companies and examine problems that they may have. And it could be any kind of problem. It could be things that are happening within their company, or it could be things, problems with, let's say, something that they sell. And these consulting firms go in and figure out what the problem is and then recommend solutions. And so I went in and I had a job as what we call an experienced strategist, which really kind of meant doing a little bit of everything. And so it was doing some UX research, it was working in e-commerce, it was doing some customer service, but all the things that you learn as a designer, which is really about design thinking, understanding the way things operate, how things fit together, all of those work really well in a lot of different, jobs. And one of those was here in consulting because if you look here, like on the larger image, that is literally what we call a flow diagram, which showed how we did content collection for digital, what we call a digital shelf, which is for e-commerce. So understanding how things flow from when the content comes in, where it goes, who approves it, who doesn't, That's all involved in design thinking. And that's kind of just a higher level of how you use your design brain just in a different way. And at the bottom, like the thing that looks like it has stickies, that's a virtual workshop that we did where we were really prompting the client to talk about what problems they have, how we can solve them. And we did all that via Zoom. This was during the pandemic. So we had to do all that virtually. So
Some themes I'm kind of picking up from the way you've described your career. Lucy, it sounds like number one, it's not like this is a full-time job or a part-time job or a contract job. It could be anything. Like
yes,
there's a lot of different
absolutely.
opportunities. Awesome.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. And I think that understanding that the skills that you have within you, and it's not just the hard skills, right? Like knowing software, knowing how to do certain things is very valuable, but it's also just how your brain works and how you
Mhm.
communicate and how interact with other individuals. All of those skills will carry you through, and design thinking and all those skills are things you could take with you throughout your entire career into many different areas, not just in design.
Wow. Well, how did you choose this as your career pathway?
That's a really great question. And I wish I had a really cool answer, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I went in for theater design and I graduated. I was a little nervous because I didn't know how I'd make a living doing that. And then when I started getting interested in, I've always been creative and drawing, and I just kind of fell into graphic design. And since then, the field of design has really just, exploded and
Mhm.
changed dramatically. And so, yeah, even though I don't actually do graphic design as my job anymore, I still am very passionate about it. So,
Wow. I think a lot of people feel like there's going to be like this moment that's going to happen and they're going to know exactly what to do. And I think sometimes it's reassuring to hear it's not usually the way it actually works in real life.
I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I'm just going to let you know that. So I'm still figuring it out. And I'm a lot closer to retirement age than not. So, I think that's just something you go through. And I think the one thing I took away from all this is that you don't have to do the same thing for your whole entire life. Do something, try it out, see how it feels. If you like it, keep doing it. If not, you can always change to something different.
Yeah.
That's something that I did not know when I was younger, and I wish I'd been told. So I always try and pass that along. I think it's important.
No, I love that. The last slide I think you have with some content examples was you have some ideas of, I think, what you're doing currently. And this
Yep.
was really what you were talking about when we first came on about your current
Yes.
role. Is there anything here that you think the students should really understand about where you've moved in your career and what's
Yeah.
different about your current work?
Absolutely. So, one thing I'll say is that having a design background is really helpful because I know how designers think. And so, some of the work that I do is actually very not design oriented. So, like telling people how to document their work, for example, is something that designers don't like to do. But if you look, you could see like the little diagram of the fruit. That is how I communicated with the designers about how to determine how much work they're doing. It's, if you're an engineer or someone who has more of a math brain, you'll think about things in numbers and very specific. Designers may have a different type of brain or a different understanding. And so it was like, okay, well, we could get through to them by using a visual that is a little more abstract and involves things like fruit, which I think was a lot of fun. We had great feedback from the designers on that. And another thing is the image in the middle. So when we have a new hire, we want people to be able to talk about themselves and, introduce themselves to other people in the organization. So we created this document where they go in and they just talk about themselves and add photos, and this gets passed around to other people on their team. And this is just an easy way for folks to get to know each other without actually meeting in person. And the last photo is really just a bunch of us got together for a conference, and you could see there's two of us who are designers. The rest of them are like engineers, but we all get along great because it's just about working together and sharing the same common goal of making people's lives easier in our company. So
I love that. So important to have
yeah.
work that you love and be able to do it with people that you enjoy being with. That's fantastic. I want to talk a little bit about skills and personality qualities that really help someone to thrive in this particular career. if you take the career quiz on Tallo, it helps break down your career interest into these different little categories. So realistic, enterprising, investigative, conventional, etc. You don't have to tie it to these personalities, but can you tell us a little bit about, in your opinion, what personal qualities or personality types are necessary or would thrive in this job?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that obviously investigative and artistic are the two obvious ones. Really being observant and, understanding the space, really asking questions. There's, I don't know if you all know about the 5 whys, but that's like a big one that designers use, is to continually ask why until you get to the root of a problem. And so just constantly be curious and, ask questions. Ask broader questions too, not just what's exactly in front of you. And creativity takes many different forms, right? It's not just about how well you draw, but I honestly at this point probably draw horrible. I don't remember the last time I drew something, but that doesn't mean that you're not creative. It's about how your mind can process things. It's about thinking outside of the norm and just being a little more open to ideas and things of that nature. So, yeah, those would be my two big ones, but I think all those things down there can really, pull into a design career easily.
Gotcha. Well, let's see what research says are the most important qualities, and I'm curious to see if you think it aligns. Oh, look at there. Artistic, investigative, asking those questions, and then being analytical and being able to draw inferences. Sounds like you just described what you would learn on Tallo. So, students, if you haven't done so already, you can take the career quiz assessment, and it will tell you how well some of your natural personalities align with this career and others. The next thing I want to talk about is, the question we get a lot. It's like, well, how much does someone make in this career? So we pulled some information again from Tallo. You can go to Tallo and look at career details and find quick facts, including salary information. And usually there's a range. So this just kind of gives you an idea of where someone with the title graphic designer might make inside of an organization. Lucy, if you have anything to add on that, that's great. Otherwise, we'll keep moving.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add there's so many different varieties of design roles. So you could be a UX designer, you could be a UX researcher, you could be a graphic marketing designer. There's a lot of different varieties. So the salary can literally go from one end of the spectrum to the other. But yeah, I mean, that median sounds probably pretty accurate.
Very good. Well, are there any specific like training certifications that can help somebody stand out?
Yeah, so I have gotten a bunch of certifications over the years. I think Interaction Design Foundation is a great one for if you're more focused on product and UX. There's a lot of work there. And you'll see some of the certifications I have are not actually design oriented at all. They're more for my current role now. But anything that I think just being able to continually learn and keep updated on, certain softwares, like as you're learning about, like, the Creative Suite or Figma or any of those are all really important and good to have.
I love it. Sounds like the most important quality we're talking about here is just your willingness to keep learning. Because this,
Absolutely. Never stop. Never stop.
we're going to pause here for another survey. Students, this is a chance for you to give us some feedback. So now that you've heard a bit about Lucy and her journey and the work she does, tell us, what is the most valuable thing that you've learned so far? Yep, lots of different types of jobs. I know the interesting thing for me was learning how you took some design skills and turned it into a role where you're consulting and advising, and even that whole design process was part of being creative. I thought that was very interesting. I love this, always being creative and ready to learn.
It's a lot harder to do as you get older. Just
For sure. And students, just a reminder to be entering your questions on the Q&A tab inside Slido. That's where we're going to pull your questions from for Lucy here in just a moment. So Lucy, I have just a few more questions before we jump into our student questions. One of them is, what do you think is the biggest misconception about working in design?
I think the biggest misconception is that design is not needed, quite frankly. I think that there's a lot of, especially I think in product design where, especially nowadays you can go into AI, you could just say, hey, I want to build this and it will build something. But there's so many nuances that
Mhm.
people don't understand about why design is important. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. And it's also very frustrating as a designer.
Well, speaking of things that can be frustrating. What's the most challenging part of the work that you do, and how do you handle it?
Oh, that's a good question. In my current role, I think one of the most frustrating things is there's just never enough time to do all the things that we need to do. And there's also a lot of times where you just can't fix something that is creating friction or problems for some of your designers for a variety of reasons. And I think that that's, you have to learn to let go of certain things. You can't fix it all. I will, one anecdote I'll say is every time when I worked back at PSP Sports and we would send, 3 examples of potential designs to the teams, they would always choose the one that we disliked the most. And that was pretty much guaranteed. It never didn't happen that way. So, and then it was just like, okay, I know they're going to pick this one because I don't like it. And that's exactly what would happen every time. So,
Oh, wow. Well, I have one more question for you before we jump into the student questions. And that is, if you could go back in time and give career advice to your high school self, what would you
oh,
say?
Oh, wow. I would say don't panic. Don't rush into something and just take my time and experiment and decide. I think really having that pressure of I'm going to do this for the rest of my life was really hard for me to manage. And it took me a very long time to break out of that. So I think that would be my biggest one. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, also. Let me just say some people know what they want to do and stick with it. I was definitely not one of them. So,
I love it. We have one more survey for the students before we jump into those questions from students. So now that you've had a chance to hear from an expert in this space, how do you feel? You didn't scare them off, Lucy.
that's a plus. I'll take it.
Yep, absolutely. Overall, if you could take a moment to rate the session with this career speaker and let us know how much it helped you. Okay, Lucy, so here's my first question for you. What software do you use currently, and what is your favorite?
Great question. I use a lot of different software. Obviously, I do use Adobe Creative Suite quite a bit. So I'm a huge InDesign fanatic. So InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop are still my top 3. I also use Figma at work, although I don't love it, I won't lie. So I have used many others over the years. Sketch, which no longer really is around. Those are the top ones for graphic design. I mean, they're still ruling the roost. So yeah.
One final question for you. Do you have to go to college? I mean, you mentioned that you were
Mm,
self-trained. So is this a job that
yes.
you need to go to college for?
I don't believe so personally. I think that, I'm a firm believer in that having experience, whether it's through an internship or doing some of the freelance, pro bono work
Mhm.
that we talked about, I think that's very valuable. And not to say that college isn't, but if you're on a path in your life where you're not ready to spend that money or make that commitment, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying it out on your own. Like I was self-taught in graphic design. There were no real, there were some classes and college courses at that time, but it just worked out in my favor to just be self-taught and play around. There's so much out there on YouTube and all these areas that where you could just learn about the fundamentals of design and just really just start doing it is really the best way to learn, honestly. Just spend time doing it. And that's number one for sure.
It's great advice. I love that. Well, Lucy, thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah.
experience, your knowledge with us. I hope that our Tallow talent picked up some insights that surprised or sparked something new for them. To the students who joined us today, if you have more questions about this career, you can explore graphic design career pathways on tallow.com. Everyone's path is going to be different, but that's what makes it yours. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and remember there's not a single right way to build your career. We're going to be back another day with a different story from a totally different field. And the more paths you see, the more possibilities you can discover for yourself. Thanks so much.